Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the SmartSights Spotlight series. Um, as new users, you are normally focused on a specific task or goal. This series is designed to provide visibility to some fundamentals and capabilities you may have yet to encounter. The backdrop for today's presentation is the food and beverage industries. The report example we will illustrate is a clean in place process. So again, this is number 4 in the series, and again, intended to provide you a little bit of training with respect to additional capabilities that are available. What we'll be doing here for the presentation is we're going to give a short Excel reporter overview. Then we're going to work with an example project or report, if you will, and we potentially have questions and answer at the end. So, Excel reporter overview. We can connect, as it says, to a variety of data sources. These are commercial SCADA providers, Rockwell, Siemens, Aviva, GL, for example. In addition, there are other standards that we support, such as OPC and OLEDB, which means this extends to SCADA providers other than the major providers. It also allows you to use relational databases as a source of data. We can even use, for example, sets of log files that have been generated from the system as input, so a very flexible system. Now, the Excel reporter, for those of you that are unfamiliar, it's built on the template or the workbook template framework that you find with Excel. So, so a template, a worksheet, a workbook, we use that file format. Everything that we do is fully compatible with Excel. However, you don't need Excel in your system or accessible to run what we call Studio Designer. It can be run standalone. Now, should you have Excel and wish to use Excel, Design Studio can be run in Excel as a plugin. So you can take the advantage of both. Now, we have the ability to generate reports either on demand, meaning an operator can come to the console or to the web interface, if you will, input what parameters are required and simply generate the report at that moment, or it can be set up to be run at a scheduled time. Most of these reports that are used for certification or what have you have to be closely monitored. They're normally run on a scheduled basis. Produced overnight, for example, and then distributed automatically to a group of individuals that are required for authorization. In addition to the UI that you're going to be seeing here for the actual design client, we have support for web browser or a Windows desktop. Now, as I alluded to earlier, we can also distribute these reports automatically. They can be distributed in workbook form, as an Excel spreadsheet, if you will. It can be distributed as a PDF, and that PDF can be encrypted with a password. We can also export web reports so that you can populate a web portal. Now, these can also be the distribution methods can be via email, FTP if you want to populate another storage area within your organization. We can also generate data exports for a database. Now, in this particular series, what we're going to do, we're going to be highlighting what we call report as you run. What that means is, rather than tying to a historian or a database, one of the sources that we've indicated earlier that we can support, we can talk directly to the device generating the data. And that would allow you to go ahead and, in addition to what you do with other resources, still visualize with charts, formulas, industry-specific functions. And that's exactly what we're going to be trying to demonstrate today. Event monitoring. We will use triggers to trigger signals to detect the process runtime when the process starts, when you move from one stage to another, and that's what we'll be demonstrating as well. In addition, any of those data elements, whether it is the production run, a batch number, a cycle ID, all of that can be incorporated into what we call the report name so that it can be stored with that information and to make it either easier to store or retrieve. Now, again, we touched previously on automated reporting and distribution, and that's something that we're going to be showing as well. Also, the configurability of the actual report elements that you have available. And with that, we'll jump to an example. All right, this is the Project Explorer. Some of you may not be familiar with this. This is the designer UI in which we'll be going in, working with the actual report itself. All right, now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be, I'm connected to a simulator. I don't have access to any of those production SCADA data sources, but we'll be using the simulator to obviously pretend that we're connected to a source. In addition, to fully show you how this would work in this real-time data capture environment, we have to set up a couple of features here first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, project, all right, and we're going to come into the designer, all right. Now the schedule designer here, what this allows you to do is set up an automated report scenario. So what you see here, we have a number of features, a number of line items here. What I'm going to do is I'm simply going to utilize these to generate the report, and then we can walk through the various steps associated with this. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the scheduler on. And now you see we have the scheduler running here. All right, so now it's going to be recording any of the actions that are generated and generated a report with it. In addition to that, I need to use a tool here to simulate the PLC, the device that we'll be connecting to. And so that means here I'm going to open up the system check. All right, let me make sure I can see this other piece as well. All right, so what I'm going to do here is, these are some of the attributes that I can modify within the system. So currently, you can see in the scheduler, nothing's active here. Everything here is, shaded. I'm going to go ahead and start the process by cycling, if you will, the flag and indicating that the cycle start has happened. So we'll go ahead and generate that. And as you can see, we do get that same here designation within the scheduler. All right, so now let's go ahead and cycle through. This is the variable that I've used to carry the value for that. So let's go ahead and start with the first cycle step. All right. So now that the process is running, generating data, and this is all for cycle 1 or step 1, if you will. I'm going to go ahead now. Let's kick it into gear, run into cycle 2. All right, we'll go ahead. Let's give it cycle 3. And then what we'll do here is after a few more seconds, we'll go ahead and stop the cycle. If you look down in the lower right-hand corner of the scheduler, you'll see the bottom 2 line items in the scheduler that are currently grayed out. They will now take effect and be applied. So let's go ahead here and turn the process off. And now you see everything has completed. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to close this and close this, shut this down here. All right, so if we now come to the, we're at the Project Explorer again. What I'm going to start with here, let's look at the report that was generated. I think that'll give a better idea of the data that we're dealing with and how everything's laid out. And then we can walk through an explanation of how it's put together. So if I come to Workbook Reports, I come over here under the CIP Food and Beverage Demo, which is the name of it, June 24th. Now you'll see for today, here is the Clean in Place report. Now, what you'll notice here in this hierarchy, we have the we have the name of the report, and under it we have a folder, and it's the year and the month. Within that folder, ideally what you'll have is a file, one for that's date stamped, as you can see, for each day of that month. So what we have here, let me go ahead and blow this one up for everybody. All right, so we've got some header information, the vessel number, a CIP number, the date. You see some overview information, the start and the end time duration, flow limits and such. Now you see this procedure table. What it simply does, it's a way to lay out what the steps are in the process, what the anticipated duration is, temperature and flow information, as well as comments. All right. Now, if we come down here, we have a line chart. All right, and you can see it starts high, goes low, but again, this is all based on specifically on the data that was generated uh, by the process I'm tied to, the simulator. And you'll notice we have this status bar, if you will. We start with the caustic wash, we go to the next step, first rinse, drain to floor, another caustic wash. All right, so that corresponds to starting the process and then going through steps 1, 2, and 3. Now, further down here, we have a table that contains the actual raw data. Now, this is a multi-purpose report, if you will. The first portion deals with, basically the legend, if you will, and the and the chart. Most oftentimes, management their interest is simply on this particular group of information. Operations staff, people on the actual production floor, however, are usually as much, if not more, interested in the raw data. So what we've done here is simply shown that you can have a report that shows both of this information. We also have a flexible format in that you could set this up so that, for example, you have, instead of just the template tab, you could have multiple tabs. You could have the summary tab in which you simply show this information. You could then have a data tab, a subsequent tab, on which you have the following raw data. This allows you to go ahead and one, give more real estate available for the graphical portion, as well as be able to provide this in a packaging, if you will, where you don't have to be concerned that management only gets the graphs, operations staff only gets the data. This then could be, for example, packaged either as you see here or as a PDF distributed to everyone. In that case, the management, they simply look at the first tab, which is, of course, the default tab. Everybody else can hit the data tab and look at the raw data. Now, a couple of things I'd like you to note. This table here, and we'll take a look at it, is a table that's, this is simply an express chart that's created from within the Excel reporter, and we'll show you how that's done. The key pieces are here. If you notice, every second there is a reading and an entry here in the table, and it starts with the caustic wash, and then it jumps down to the first rinse. Well, for most of us that have worked with any kind of reporting, normally what happens is you have all these columns. Every cell in the column is filled out if there are any other columns that are filled out. So what you would normally have, for example, is the caustic wash all the way up to here, the first rinse all the way down to here, and etc. But what we've done is we have the capability not only here, but in the progress bar here, again, you would normally see all these indicators at 1 second intervals showing what's going on. What we've been able to do is more or less clean up that display or use a summary or first instance, if you will. We can, for example, in both this case, and it's probably easier here in the chart, we're using one of the management features within Excel Reporter so that we can, for a particular field, use the first value, display it, and then until the value changes, we don't display anything further. So it makes for a lot cleaner looking report. Then down here, for example, at time 707.:21, it changed. So it again printed a process stage, but then printed nothing until it changed again. So something that from the standpoint of actually creating a report, these types of features can be very handy in being able to, one, they're easy to implement, and two, it provides a more readable output. So let's go ahead now and jump to what makes all this work. Let's go ahead and open up the template. So here's the template. Now, from and again, the assumption here is that you have some familiarity. I'll try and provide any background information as I can, taking into account that possibly you do not. Here's a connection. These are all the data connections. So, for example, in this particular case, we have this variable here in C3, that's the vessel number. All right. In G3, that's the CIP number. And then we've got a raw variable that gives us the date here. So we can take the data and just put it directly into a cell on the report. If we come down to this section here, right, now we've got a more tabular format, a more table-driven, a tabular format. What that allows us to do here is this allows us to go ahead, interrogate the data source, specify all the tags, or in this particular case, the columns and the column headings, if you will, so that you can lay this across all the fields within an entire row at a single run. So it makes it a lot easier to maintain, a lot easier to manage. All right. Now, this is your typical data type interaction, taking the data, displaying it on the page. I referred to earlier the management functions. Now, the management functions is where things get really exciting. So let me come here. All right. Now, remember, on this, this particular chart here, the process stages only filled for those that were one of a kind. The first occurrence of a particular process stage, then it would blank out until it got to a new one. Here is the table. The table here is not only informational, it also helps drive the reporting. The lookup range, this particular piece here, okay, and as you can see what it does, it shoves all the data in the target, J49. Well, that's down here. Down here, all right? That's J49. So what we're telling it here is, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping around a little bit, we're going to interrogate the table. And the table starts in B14, all right? And based on the value that is in this, and the step value is the process ID, the 1, 2, and 3 that I placed in the interface earlier to drive the function, it will then find the next column or columns and use it as a fill variable for output onto the report. So this is how you got first rinse, drain to floor, caustic wash, etc. on there in the order that you saw it. Okay. Now the chart, this chart here, okay, this is what we call an express chart. If we look at the data series, it simply indicates here, for example, if we look at the series for, we can look at here, it's showing you where we're picking up the data from these, for example, and where we're returning them to for each of these inputs. We're looking at the temperature and, of course, the conductivity. So this is something, for example, you would simply select all the data here that you wanted to input, and then you could simply select what we call the express chart, create this chart, and have it lay out. Now, a couple of other pieces here. Let me go ahead and drop this down just for simplification. Okay, I'm going to pull up, I don't want to pull up that one. This is the schedule designer, and this is the area that actually drives the functions. All right, now the first thing I'm going to do, so I don't forget, I'm just going to stop the schedule. All right, so these are the three. Now, obviously, this is showing the scheduled items simply for this report. In a production environment, you would have many more, you would have pages of this, but you can group these together for individual reports, put data tags in there from the standpoint of comments, so it becomes very easy to see. But what we have here, for example, the first one, let's go ahead and take a look at this. All right. What we're doing here is we're simply saying we're going to use a user-defined variable, the cycle start. You saw me use that before when I was in the tool. When it hits 1, I'm going to start a recurring activity, which is looking at the start event, the event time. All right, and every second I'm going to run a reading. What I will do then is down here in the action is I'm simply going to update the work group with the worksheet, which means single sheet or multiple sheets, and that's all I do. All right, so this thing is running for every second that it runs. The second one here, This simply acknowledges that when the condition finally turns to 0, which means the process is over, I'm still going to run a final update so that that final piece of information that may have been passed to the tool is recorded into the worksheet. And then here, the last thing that we're going to do here is we're going to go and the data that was laid out, I showed you in the connector, we had a single line designation for all the field data that was going to be laid out in the table, the tabular layout with the raw data. What wasn't in that was that last field that showed what the actual stage was in the process. This is that function that runs after the table is completely written out or developed, if you will. It then goes through there on the position chart where it showed you where you were in the stages, as well as that column. It now fills in those descriptions rather than the numbers of the stage. All right. So what that does is it makes it very easy, again, to manipulate data, to understand what's going on, and provide a more presentable, if you will, format from the reports, something that is a bit more involved than you might be able to do, for example, with Excel itself, but doesn't require a lot of additional training or expertise to do. So with that, let me go ahead and cancel this here. I encourage you to please reach out through the invitations that you received with any questions that you have. Certainly feel free to request more information, possibly speak with a sales representative, or in fact with a technical resource like myself, the applications engineers, to give you more technical details or potentially even get involved in a demo. So again, appreciate your participation here and look forward to you joining the next session that we have next week.